Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Midweek with Meaning. My name is Angela Ward, and I am a registered nurse and soul midwife, as well as the CEO of Guardian at the Gateway, where we help you to journey within and return renewed. If you are tuning in live right now, please say hello. Let me know where you're coming in from. And if you're watching the replay, please put replay in the comments. I would love to know if you checked this out before or after. This show I've been doing weekly for quite a while, and the material is really related to what I'm hearing from my clients and what's kind of up, what seems to be up, and what I'm hearing a lot about. So this week, today I would like to talk about death. What inspired this is for a number of reasons. One is the season that we're in. Traditionally, we're at the end of the harvest. We are where parts of the earth die away, where things are returning to the earth and getting recycled and renewed. But also there's a lot of letting things go, and ultimately death is that final letting things go. I think this is a topic that a lot of people are afraid to talk about or really avoid in a lot of ways. I think particularly American culture, not sure about Canadian culture, but American culture is very death phobic and resistant to really even have a conversation about it. So there's a lot I want to say on the topic. I'll dive in here in a moment. But just before I get in too far, I just want to share that I have had a lot of experience with death, both in my personal life and in my professional life. Definitely had a lot of family members die, especially when I was a young person. So it was around me a lot. And then just for vulnerability and transparency, I am also a bereaved parent. And some of you may know this or may not. This might be news to you, but I brought my little girl with me today to hang out over my shoulder. This is Sophia. She would be about 17 and a half years old right now, but she passed away when she was 6 months old from complications related to a congenital heart defect that she was born with. And I'm not telling you this because I'm asking you to feel bad for me or, this isn't a competition about grief. This is a conversation about death. And what I want to say about being close to her death and to the death of other adults and infants. I worked a lot as a labor and delivery nurse doing perinatal bereavement. So working with families that were either having their babies born still or maybe miscarrying at, ages incompatible with life, or maybe passing away in the NICU. It is such a fascinating portal. It is such a fascinating portal. There's someone watching, Josiah is watching. I know that she is a death doula. And I would really like to help you feel a little more at peace or at ease with this idea of death. Now, it can be frightening and spooky. It's part of what Halloween season is all about, is like, ooh, dead things. But I also want to say that it's not horrible. I think that some people do have challenging maybe even painful death experiences. But I think a huge part of that problem is because we don't talk about it and we really don't let people know what kind of control they might actually have over their death to some degree. Ultimately, we don't have any control over what happens at the end of our lives. Of course, it's just this releasing. Uh, but but to understand that there are, you got to think about it, friends. You got to think about it. You got to have some plans in place. There are a number of ways we can talk about those plans in a second. Someone like Josiah would be great to chat with about getting the right kind of documents in order and that kind of thing. But for what I'm thinking is, well, for example, my best friend passed away in 2014 of a particular illness, and I was not her only best friend. She had a lot of beloved people, and she'd really planned her death. She was young. West Side Mimi, fucking love you, girl. Um, she had a chronic illness, and that was terminal. But she had a lot of time to think about it and a lot of time to consider how she wanted to be supported at the end of her life. And she was at home with her parents. They took over her care, which was really appropriate and really sweet that they were able to be with her. And she'd also wanted um, her partner and another beloved friend of hers, who's this amazing priestess, to be with her and to help walk her out, essentially. They I had seen her the day before she died, and there was just such a magical, profound timing of her death in that we had her friends had all gathered with the hope of just getting together and going to visit her and celebrate her and see her. But like, she timed her death. I swear it was incredible. That she, all these friends were starting to gather. One friend came down who was a death midwife and had gone to see her and done a prayer, which I wish I could remember. It was something about, beloved, you are dying. And a way for my dear friend to really be like, I'm stepping into that place, that the act of dying is happening. Now, of course, I'm saying our act of die, we're dying in every moment, really moving in that direction, right? You're one step closer no matter where you are. But our friends came, she did that prayer. I went and saw her and just had some sweet times with her. And then later that night, apparently she told her father that she didn't want any more pain medication. She said enough. And she began the surrender process. And so I was here at my home, kind of gathering the people that were coming that we had already planned to see her, while her partner and this other woman did some kind of energy work over her. They sung the Gayatri mantra and they kind of energetically helped to fan her and anoint her. And, but her family also gathered. And so they got to be like going in and out with being with her. And then her partners would come and do that work with her. And then we were invited to come see her after she passed. And I'm smiling now. Of course, it was heartbreaking, but also like, right on, girl. You did it right. I realized when I saw her that death had kind of blossomed on her. And I know that sounds kind of strange to say, but I could see how death had been coming for a long time. And I didn't really recognize that's what it was until I saw her dead, right? And she still looked like her. And it was so interesting. Her niece and nephew, young niece and nephew, came over. Her parents were her family was trying to shield them from seeing their beloved aunt dead, but they insisted that they wanted to see her, which I think was so good. They came in and we asked if they wanted to honor her. And so they took some flowers that were in her room and they tore the petals up and put them on her bed. Her littlest niece asked to have time alone with her with the door shut, and we could just hear her talking to her, and crying, but just like, it was so sweet because she got to have her time. It wasn't shielded from her. They brushed her hair. It was it was really an honor to be closer to that type of passing. I've also been with people that have died in the hospital, and our healthcare system, it's really only been recently, I mean, probably in the last, I don't know, 30 years maybe, in the medical profession where we've actually had conversations about dying. When I was 19 years old, which was quite a while ago, my favorite aunt was dying of cancer. She was pretty young too, which was surprising. Such a crazy time. Uh, at the time, we knew she was dying. I knew she was dying, and I knew she didn't want to be in the hospital. I knew she wanted to be home. She had horses. She instilled a love of horses in me, and I just knew she wanted to be able to look at them and just be at the place where she loved to be. And at the time, she was at Swedish Medical Center, and I'm sure Swedish has changed by now, but at the time they'd stuck her in a way far off wing back in somewhere that was out of the way and just like kind of ignored her. It was so fucked up. And I was really young and afraid of death at the time and didn't really know how to be supportive. I was kind of scared to even be with her. But I did really fight for her. I got so angry at my family that they were leaving her in this place. And there was a Friday night that the doctors were going to come talk to her about maybe letting her come home, and they totally ignored us. And they never came to see her. And I was just like livid because I knew that she didn't want to spend the weekend still in the hospital with tubes and wires and all this shit. So unfortunately, she died in the hospital, and she never got to be connected to the things that she loved. Fast forward to these more current times. My brother-in-law's mother passed away a couple weeks ago, and she'd been on and off ill for some time, but they planned to let her die at home. My brother-in-law's sister also died at home recently, and what a difference it makes to have people at the portal when this opens. Of course, it was difficult for him to be there and my sister to be there. And yet it was so different than having someone locked away in a space where it's like death is sterilized in a way, which isn't true. I mean, it's messy and people don't die perfectly. People have a struggle. Yet there is so much more there when we can support each other through this. I'm going to tell you another story about a death I experienced as a nurse. And I think the overall takeaway that I'm trying to share here is that death is one of those great equalizers in a way. And I don't mean that it makes us all humble or level on the same playing field. What I mean is that every family, like people share these feelings around the experience. It can be complicated, of course, with an adult that maybe has had challenging situations, but at my time working as a labor and delivery nurse, I had the honor of supporting a number of families as they were losing their babies. I specialized in that work because of the death of my own daughter. I felt it really, really important to create impactful, to really hold space for people as they are in that transition, because it's such a huge thing. It's such a huge thing for people. It doesn't matter who it is, we live our lives day to day like, oh, nothing's happening. But really, for people that are going through either dying themselves or supporting the dying, it it's a trip. It's truly a psychedelic experience because time changes completely. So let me tell you about this family. Um, they were, I think they were from Afghanistan, and um, observant Muslims. This family was a late term um, fetal demise, is what we'd call it, meaning that she was like 38 weeks, or baby was at the age of viability, and uh, baby was alive, and then came in for their next appointment, and baby was gone and had been gone for a while. And it was very difficult because, what do, right? People don't expect this at all. It's especially challenging when it's with infants because people have plans, right? They're like, got this big plan, and then it's like such a different experience. They're not planning on buying, things for a funeral, right? So this family came in. They spoke next to no English except for the dad. And had you seen this family? This was maybe a decade ago, or a little less, but we still kind of had that image of Middle Eastern men being, I don't know, I think in American culture we like really portray those people as terrorists still in some way. And it was, and especially maybe men from Afghanistan as being part of the Taliban, maybe, and suppressing women or whatever. And that's not my role as a nurse to show up assuming who these people are. I just need to be with them how they are in this moment. So this baby was born, a beautiful little girl that had clearly been gone for a while. And in their culture, women who give birth are not allowed to touch a dead body for, I think, 40 days or something after they give birth. So imagine the complication of not being able to hold her baby or do any of the things that could really help her, uh, I don't know, say goodbye in her own way. So a lot of times families really, no matter who is dying, allowing people to help be part of their aftercare, like letting them help clean or dress their babies or even adults, can just be this real tender, sweet way of caring, right? Dressing their beloved. It's one of the ways that we can honor them and say goodbye. But this mother couldn't do that. So the dad had to take on all that responsibility. And his brother was an imam, so a religious leader. And in their culture, they have to ideally have the baby buried before sunset. And so there's a lot to be done. But it was so beautiful to be able to witness this man's grief and love for his little girl as he tended to her body and cleaned her and anointed her with oil and wrapped her in a shroud in the way that is part of their culture. And I mean, even in this moment, when I think about it, it makes me feel just so moved. And what an honor to be able to support them through that, and that's what I mean by the great equalizer. Like, oh, you're just a human being and part of a connected family that is feeling some pain right now. It doesn't matter your political perspectives. It doesn't matter your gender identity. It doesn't matter your income bracket. This is coming for you. It's coming for me. And how can we hold each other in those moments? Yeah. I was listening to a podcast this week on Radio Lab that was about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And many of you probably have heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's the 5 stages of grieving. Yeah, I think it's her 5 stages of grieving. But what I didn't know was those 5 stages of grieving weren't for people that are grieving. They were for people that are dying. It was so interesting to consider that and to be able to hear that her work really revolved around listening to the dying. And of course, she was fundamental in helping change death care practices in Western medicine. And I hope that we can get so much better at this. So some of the things I want you to think about, because it is this month of transition. If you were to die today, how would you feel about your life? How would you feel about the people you're connected to? How would you feel about how you're treating the people around you? How would you feel about how you're treating yourself and how you think about things? Is this how you want it to be? And if not, what are you fucking waiting for? What are you waiting for? Right? Like, why? Like, I didn't know. I didn't know 6 months were all I was going to get. And every day was fucking awesome and hard. You know, who do you love that needs to know you love them? What are conversations you need to have about this? There are a ton of resources I'll probably be sharing through the week. And just to give you a little perspective about what's up for the next couple episodes of Midweek with Meaning. So this week we're talking a bit about death, and I hope this is giving you some food for thought and maybe some curiosity, despite whatever fear or anxiety it might be bringing up. Next week, we're going to be talking about releasing grief, because these two are intertwined. And whether or not we're talking about physical death or the parts of you that are dying away or the relationships that are dying, there are things that are dying around you that oftentimes we need to grieve and be sad about. So we're going to talk more about grief next week. And then the week after, we're going to have a guest, Kira, I don't know what last name she's going by right now. Kira Swearton. Pardon me, Kira, of Root Wisdom. She's a friend that I've known for a very long time. And on her path, she has become really skilled in working with the ancestors. So as we approach this idea of Halloween and Day of the Dead, and the time that we think of these beloved dead and ancestors that have transitioned, and believe me, you have so many ancestors you can't even imagine. We're going to talk a bit about how to bring them closer and how to honor them and remember them. So that is the vision for the next couple weeks. So make sure you tune in. Please invite your friends if this is something you're interested in sharing about or hearing more about. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram and all that garbage that you're supposed to say. But of course, let's end this little chat with an updated card for the week. So last week we had this beautiful card that was called Center. We were talking about celebrating our beloveds. This week, as we're talking about death, again, we're going to look at the Sacred Earth Oracle. Thank you again, Ellie, for this lovely gift. And let's see what these cards have to say about death, and if there's any extra insight or perspective that might enhance this conversation this week. What wants to come out and talk with us here today? I got two, actually. Huh. Well, perhaps I won't read all of them, but I will show them to you. It's very interesting because they look so similar to the card from last week. Two of them jumped out, and one is called Efficiency, and one is called Discernment. So let's take a peek at those. I wanted to say one other thing before I move on about death and how it is part of our natural cycle. Like, we all know that. But I was in the Olympic National Forest for my anniversary with Jed, and we went on this hike called the Ancient Groves hike, and it had all these really amazing old trees that were 1,000 years old, who knows, very, very old. But in this Ancient Groves, they had a number of nurse logs. So please follow me on Instagram. It's Guardian at the Gateway. I'm going to post something about this very soon so you can see a picture of this nurse log. But what a nurse log is a tree that has fallen. It's dead, right? Its roots are torn up. It's no longer producing leaves. In fact, it's starting to decay. And yet, as it breaks down, it becomes the support for the next generation of trees and growth. This amazing tree that we saw, it was like, I can't even tell you how long it was. I mean, it was a huge tree, and it was just covered in new trees and ferns and mushrooms. And like, that's the thing I really want to remind you is death, regardless of what, your anxiety or acceptance of it is, it's essential, and it is how we become ancestors that support the generations to come. So, blah, blah. Okay, let's see what these two sweet little cards, here's what we got. Can you see them okay? How do I tip them? There we go. Discernment and efficiency. Do you see how they kind of look like last week? It's interesting that they're both green. One person appears to be holding flowers, and she has floofy hair. That's the discernment one. And the efficiency one, I'm not certain what's being held here. What is that? Can you see it? Okay, here, let's see. Get focused. Focus. Where's my camera? It's like a seed, or it's like a flame, perhaps. I'm not certain. Okay, let me see what jumps out. Oh, there's also a moon. Maybe it's a sun and a moon. Okay, efficiency. Let's look there first. And I'm going to make it kind of short. Okay. The earthly meaning of efficiency is unnecessary or fruitless struggle. I think that's very related to death, that it's an unnecessary struggle. It's a fruitless struggle. There's no point in, fighting it. A fresh approach to an old problem brings a surprising reward. So considering your relationship to death might actually shift something. Free up funds, time, and energy. Look for ways to do more with less. A minor adjustment in attitude or methodology can make a massive difference. A creative breakthrough is imminent. This talks about imagination and letting your imagination guide you. And then it goes on to talk about forests, which is kind of interesting. So let me put the efficiency card aside. Thank you, efficiency card. And then discernment says, and funny, they're right next to each other in the book. I'm pretty sure I shuffled that deck. I feel like we've had these cards before because this makes sense to me. It's talking about, the earthly meaning says, the books, films, and people you choose to spend time with subtly feed your beliefs about how the world works. I think that makes some sense. So who are you listening to around this idea of death? Are you hearing fear? Are you hearing that it's to be, fought against the whole time? Or what do you believe about this? Perhaps surround yourself with some people that have some other ideas about it. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is one. There's also an amazing man named Stephen Jenkinson who did a film called Grief Walker. You can get it on the Film Board of Canada. I refer all kinds of people to watch this film all the time. So if you haven't seen it, please watch it. Stat, it's so good. It says, give yourself the opportunity to absorb higher thinking, greater visions, and deeper love. I think I'm going to stop there with that statement, because that is the essence of what we're going to talk about when we talk about grief next week. Is these things wouldn't be so scary or sad if love was not an essential component of it, right? Love is what causes the sadness about the loss, Love is what wants us to comfort those when they're suffering and dying. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for listening. I hope that you have a really great week and that you allow yourself to expand your thoughts around death, to bring in more curiosity and a little more openness, perhaps a little more Like, what does it mean to you? Maybe how do you want to end your days? And are you living in the way that you want? So you line up with that. All right, my loves, I'll join you again next Wednesday. Bring your friends, share this and all that. I'll see you then. Mwah. Bye. Thank you.